Hi everyone. Today I'm going to talk about countries adopting Bitcoin. What does that mean for Bitcoin's price? What does that mean for Bitcoin's maturity as a money? And before we dig into that, I want to give a shout out to my sponsor, Ledin. Ledin is the best place to earn a yield on your Bitcoin or borrow against your Bitcoin using it as collateral. I personally use them. Definitely recommend you check them out. Link is below in the description. Okay, cool. Let's go ahead and jump on into the topic today, which is countries adopting Bitcoin. What does this mean? Game theory. Who's going to adopt it first? How's this all going to play out? By the way, I write this first in my newsletter called The Held Report. The Held Report is my newsletter that comes out on Thursdays, and then on Sundays, you hear it here on YouTube. So if you want to get it first, if you want to get the ability to check out the archives and vote on the next topic, subscribe. There's a link on the video. There's also a link in the description. Cool. Let's get started. So game theory. I'm not sure how many people have heard about game theory, but game theory is a term often thrown around in the Bitcoin space. What it means is that in a competitive environment, how should different participants make decisions based on decisions of other participants? In geopolitical game theory, it's about the strategic decision-making of nation states and their rivals. So in recent history, from the Cold War, we might have all heard about the insane and crazy complex game theory of mutually assured destruction. Mutually assured destruction meant we had a ton of nukes, they had a ton of nukes on submarines, bombers, ICBMs, and because we had so many nukes, the probability of them trying to attack us would be very remote. At the same time, that game theory could lead to a circumstance where a war does break out and there's so many nuclear warheads that we end up killing the planet. So yeah, the game theory there is a little fucking nuts, to be honest. But anyways, these are the type of things that governments think about when competing with each other, when fighting with each other. So in this new digital world, though, I don't think we have this sort of like, huge warfare game theory anymore. It's more of digital space and battling for the hearts and minds, plus the financial system. And so Bitcoin is a move in that chess game, that game theory chess game. And so I'm going to cover below some of the countries that are playing the game and some of the earliest participants in it. So El Salvador. If you've been watching my videos, if you've been reading about Bitcoin, you probably remember when El Salvador kind of became really popular after they made Bitcoin legal tender in the country. So this all started a couple of years ago when an anonymous American donor sent $100,000 in Bitcoin to a small little beach coastal town called El Zante. And so they encourage people and businesses to use Bitcoin. Some of them saved money in Bitcoin. They also used it to reward students for doing their homework. Little mom and pop vendors accepted Bitcoin. And so people and tourists across the world came to go check it out. And that's what gave its nickname Bitcoin Beach. The president of El Salvador was like, yo, this is really awesome, and made Bitcoin legal tender. So that happened on September 7th, 2021. And so he pushed it to be legal tender. Bukele, the president, pushed it to be legal tender to improve the country's financial situation. 70% of the country were unbanked, which is super wild, and I actually had to look this up myself. So in 2017, approximately 29% of the population had a bank account or other financial institution. This is up from only 14% in 2011. So this country is pretty impoverished. And then it also reduces fees on remittances, which make up 22% of their GDP. Remittances, by the way, for those who don't know, is when people send money back home to their parents or loved ones in other countries. They usually have to pay a ton of fees in moving that money abroad, and with Bitcoin, you reduce that fee to almost zero. And then finally, Bukele saw this as an opportunity to rebrand El Salvador from a country primarily known as the murder capital of the world with a bunch of gang violence and a sluggish economy to a more modern hub of innovation where entrepreneurs could come, take advantage of super low taxes on Bitcoin, basically 0% taxes, and kind of a very little regulatory burdens that they would have to deal with. Before we begin, I want to give a shout out to Choice, one of my sponsors. As most of you know, when you hodl, you don't have to pay taxes. But what if I told you that you could hodl, and when you eventually sell your Bitcoin, you wouldn't have to pay any taxes then? Well, I didn't think that was possible until I found a Choice IRA. Choice is the best retirement account to set up for Bitcoiners that lets you buy and hold Bitcoin in stocks without paying a dime to the government. And how does that work? Choice is an IRA. They have IRAs and Roth IRAs, which means it's a special type of retirement account where you don't pay taxes if you hodl until a certain age, along with some other stipulations. And the best part, you can self-custody your Bitcoin with Choice, which means that You don't have to trust Choice or anyone else with your Bitcoin or your private keys. It's the perfect retirement solution for Bitcoiners. The best time to start stacking sats was 11 years ago. The second best time is today. Search Stack Sats in the App Store or choiceapp.io/held. Link is included in the description below. Go check it out right now. Okay, so El Salvador was the first country, and there's been a lot of countries that have talked about Bitcoin, but Russia actually seems like one of the big, I would say the big chess moves here in this geopolitical game. Russia, instead of banning Bitcoin, which they've talked about this for a long time, they've decided to regulate it. So what's pretty wild is most of the time they've been like, yo, we totally don't accept crypto. This is not going to be allowed. But I think with what's happening with Ukraine, United States, and Russia, they're starting to realize like the U.S. has these different levers where they can shut off Russians from the financial system. And with Bitcoin, you can get around that. And so, I think what's really wild here is the government's official website, which I would take you here. I can, but it's in Russian, which none of us can read. And so over a couple of weeks ago, they published this. The support of the central bank the central bank supported Bitcoin and crypto, which is pretty wild. And they reversed their ban on crypto mining and trading. So this is pretty wild. It makes sense though, because Bitcoin is an infrastructure that can't be seized or censored. And Bitcoin's uniquely positioned to solve that problem. So how does this all end? We've got Russia coming in, El Salvador. How about the United States, China, all these other countries? Well, trying to destroy Bitcoin is nearly impossible. I wrote about this before. Can governments kill Bitcoin? It's one of the first newsletters I wrote. Really great piece on the game theory behind governments trying to attack Bitcoin. The best game theoretic approach by governments is to adopt it before others do. You buy in and go ahead. You can't defeat this thing, so you might as well join it. So will the U.S. and other countries, are they going to watch the Ukraine situation and decide to ban Bitcoin, or realize that's futile and lean into it and embrace it? I think it's the higher odds that they choose to embrace it. And ultimately, what finally do we see with, what's the final end game here? Well, what if central banks FOMO into Bitcoin? We've had hedge funds, companies buy Bitcoin. What happened in some governments, but what happens when big central banks start to buy Bitcoin as like their new gold replacement? I've waited 10 years to see how this plays out. And for me, this is pretty exciting. And we're kind of on the verge of this moment, this game theory moment where Bitcoin is now a very powerful chess move on that chessboard. Hope you enjoyed this. If you liked it, give me a subscribe or hit the like button. It helps with the algorithm, helps get this out to more people. I do Q&As, by the way, on Monday. So if you're watching this on Sunday, you want to ask me a question directly, go to the Call-In app. The Call-In app link is in the description. That's the Held Report show. It's a Q&A function where I get to go sit there and I'm able to answer any question you have. So definitely check it out. It's at 6 p.m. Eastern on Mondays. Cheers, y'all. Appreciate it. Bye.